Okay, for this painting, you're going to need a pencil, a wide brush, a medium brush, black, orange, brown, and white paint. Let's get going. Okay. The first thing I want to do is simplify my artwork. If I were to just go and straight in and paint my mummy, I would end up with a lot of extra bandages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it up so that it's easy right from the get-go. I'm going to take my canvas and visually divide it into thirds. Okay, I'm going to draw a line across my top third here. This is going to be my boo sign, so I'm going to go ahead and just write boo. Right in the middle up there. And then I've got my inner frame right here. Okay, so I've got my little frame. It's okay that it's off kilter. It's actually kind of cute when you leave it that way. And now I'm going to draw a diagonal stripe that goes about a third of the way, and it's going to go from one side of the canvas to the other. I'm going to do it about 2 fingers wide, so you see how my top finger is touching that line. From the bottom of this finger, I'm going to do a 2 finger wide line that goes all the way across. Okay, this is going to be my focal point bandage here. Okay, then coming out of that a little more than halfway, so there's the halfway mark. We're going to go just a little bit by the halfway mark. I'm going to take that and bring it up to the top here. And about 2 fingers wide again. 2 fingers wide. I'm going to make my stripe there, but I needed to continue under this bandage, so I'm going to use my finger as kind of a ruler and keep those lines going underneath this bandage here. Okay. Now my next bandage is going to line up with this one, only it's going to go under the one that we just made. And then we're going to do another bandage that comes out here. Okay, so we've got a little bit of an open space right here. And then we're going to do one that is gonna kind of overlap with this one here at the end. It's going to come across to the middle, about 2 fingers down, come this way, and then the last one's going to come across like so. Okay, so we've just got kind of a diamond here in the middle, and then our little overlapping bandages. Okay, in this space right here, I'm going to draw 2 circles. One is slightly larger than the other one, and then 2 smaller circles in the middle there. And that is essentially our mummy, and we're just going to go in now and start painting. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to fill in the spots that are our black spots. Okay, so that's going to be our frame up here. So our frame around Boo. Okay. And then any place that there is not a bandage. So I'm going to fill this in right here around the eyes. And when you want to go to those narrow places, just turn your brush sideways so that you get those nice straight lines, and then when you want wide, then you turn it the other way. You could also do this with the smaller brush if you were more comfortable with that. instead of, I think I'm going to make this just a single strip of exposed black rather than lose the whole bandage there. Okay, and then this little spot down here. Alright, I think that kind of covers it. Just for fun, I'm going to add just a few little accent pieces, so make the bandage narrower in some places. There we go. Now I've filled in all of my black. Make sure this is as far out as it can go. Okay. So I filled in all of my black. Now I'm going to go in. I'm going to make sure that my brush is nice and clean. And I'm going to go up here and I'm going to add my orange. So I'm just going to fill that in. And you'll see that you can see the pencil lines under it a little bit. That is just fine. And I've drug a little bit of black in because that black up there was a little bit wet. That's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to actually be adding some light to this after we've got our orange laid down. We're going to go back in, we're going to add a little bit of black, we're going to add a little bit of white. So it's okay if you get some of the other color drug in a little. It's not a big issue. We call them happy mistakes, or happy accidents, not mistakes, a la Bob Ross. Okay, so I've got this all filled in with my orange. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take just a touch of my white, and with my brush that still has a lot of orange on it, I'm going to just add some white to it and drag that over. So I've got some lighter orange spots. And just keep kind of mixing until the color is what I'm happy with. Okay, and then I'm going to add just the tiniest touch of black in a few spaces. See, I've added just a little bit too much for my taste, so I'm going to go in and I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to just add orange and blend that black in a little bit. There we go. Okay, now we're going to let that dry before we add the letters on. So what we're going to do now is we're going to fill in all of our white spaces. So I'm going to get in clean white because the last white I mixed with a little bit of orange, so I'm going to get some clean white and I'm just going to fill in the white spaces. Now this is just laying down a blending base, so don't worry about making it perfect just yet. This is just about laying down a blending base. You see how I'm mixing in a little bit of that black, how that black got drug in? That is okay. It actually makes the picture look a little bit more interesting. So don't stress if you end up dragging a little bit of black into it, but do try to keep your paint strokes in the same direction as your bandages are going. Okay, so now I'm getting a little bit too much black in there. It's turning my paint gray, so I'm going to go ahead and wash my brush, and then I'm going to let that section right there sit for a minute. Okay, I'm going to come in and get this side right here. I'm going to let that section sit because the more I mess with it, the grayer it's going to just blend the gray out and blend the gray out. So we're just going to let that one sit there. Come in and give this one a nice good stripe. Okay, this. Now it's always easy to add paint to your palette, but once the paint's there, it can't go back in the bottle. So I like to add it a little bit at a time, saves me money on materials. It's less for me to clean up in the end. There are lots of advantages to being frugal with the materials. Okay, so now I've got all of my white laid down. While it's still wet, I want to go in and I want to add, while it's still wet, I want to go in and I want to add some fun little highlighty spots. When you do that, or shadows, I guess. When we do that, we're going to take the brown and just the tiniest touch of it, and we're going to use our medium brush here and get a little bit of brown paint on it, a little bit of white, and we're going to outline the bandages. It'll still pick up some of that black, but it gives it kind of that old bandage look to it. So right there at the lines, we're going to take our brown and a little bit of white and blend it so we've got that nice old fabric look instead of nice fresh bandages. Stark white mummies aren't scary. And you just make sure your brush strokes keep going the same direction as your bandage does. Just a touch of black right here. And touches of brown. Okay, it's getting a little bit too muddy again, so I'm going to go ahead and wash my brush and then go back in over those spots and add white paint. I can use my wide brush now and go in and add the white paint over it. It'll give me a fun blend. And when it starts to get too muddy, like the whole thing's turning the same color, wash your brush again, let it sit and come back to that one. So anytime it starts to get really muddy and the same color everywhere, then you just go wash your brush and come back. So notice that even though that's the muddy one, I'm waiting a minute before I come back and paint over it, because all it's going to do is make it even more muddy. But now since I left this one alone for a while, when I come back over it, it actually fades out that black for me. Okay, I'm going to let that sit just a little bit longer, and while that happens, I'm going to go in and I'm going to get my eyeballs all white. So you're going to take your medium brush on this one and then just go in and those eye circles nice and clean and crisp. Pardon me. Okay, now you see how this spot right here, I've got that black paint that keeps showing through. If I take my brush and I tap paint on it instead of spreading the paint with the brush, just kind of tap it there, that will fill in that hole without me having to keep painting over it. So just tapping instead of stroking the paint on, just tap it on and it won't pick up the paint underneath quite as much. Okay, now this should be dry enough that I can go in and add the white and it won't be quite as muddy anymore. The reason I didn't do the tapping on this one is because I do want it to have the streaks from the brush. So, okay, there we go. That's perfect. Okay, now we're going to take this same medium brush up here and we're going to use it to give us a nice bold boo right here. So we're just going to trace this. And I still have some white paint in my brush, so I need to give it a good clean. Make sure it's nice and dry. Pick up some of that. Okay, so I'm just going to outline the word that I put there And if I do that with my medium brush, I'll get this nice bold line. Okay, and now we're going to do one of my favorite techniques. We're going to do some dots. Okay, so we're going to start by doing dots around this frame right here. I've got a little bit of white coming right here I want to clean up, so I'm just going to go in with my black paint right here and just crisp up that line nice and neat. There we go. Okay, and then the same right here, a little bit of that orange leaked out, so I just want to kind of crisp up the line. So I've got a nice solid frame. Okay, so we're going to do these dots. These dots are one of my most favorite things to do with my paint. You're just going to take the end of your paintbrush and dip it in the color that you want the dots to be. And then you just let that paint drip off the end of your paintbrush. So we're going to do dots all the way around this little frame right here. And that way you don't have to worry about drawing perfect circles. You let the paint fall that way on its own. And if you give it just a little slight swirl, it makes your dot a little bit bigger. It's a way to get good consistent circles without having to draw all of the circles. Until I learned this technique, I would try to hand draw all of the circles. It got really frustrating when you'd come and they'd be all uneven, but this gives you a pretty decent, fairly uniform dot structure. I love it. The only thing with the dots is they do take a little bit longer to dry because the paint is a lot thicker than what you would apply with a brush. So you're going to need to be patient with the drying process. It takes probably a good 15 minutes longer than it would be had you applied the paint with a brush. So if you were to go hang this up right away, the dots would all bleed down the canvas, which could be fun if you're feeling adventurous that way. Okay, now we're going to use the same technique to give the eyeballs to our mummy here. So just take the black, I need to add a little bit more. So take a few drops of black here, give our little mummy some eyeballs. And that's done. You can take the word boo there and decorate if you want. I've seen it done with a few little stripes. You just take some colors. You can decorate the boo if you want to. Polka dots, stripes, lines. But there you have it. Fun little mummy painting. Happy Halloween!